Okay, does everybody see my screen that says welcome to problem solving?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we'll get started. Um, so thank you guys for joining. I'm trying to do this every month or so, lunch and learn on a different topic. And I apologize I didn't put the topic in the email this time, but I guess you guys figured out when you logged in to register, it was for problem solving. But this is just going to be simple tools related to problem solving because I do see a lot of organizations struggling mightily with problem solving in regards to answering corrective actions, be it their customer complaints, internal audit findings, or IATF or ISO audit findings from the registrar. So a little bit about me. I work for a couple of registrars. I do some training in ISO 9001, mainly IATF, some AS 9100, and some other registrars as well. I'm a certified quality auditor and quality manager and quality engineer through ASQ, and I consult for companies in Tennessee and outside of Tennessee doing gap assessments, helping with certification, helping with companies with their corrective actions, and maybe some internal audit support with companies. Okay, why is 8Ds and problem solving so important? It's basically important because if you don't resolve problems, they're going to repeat, and repeated problems are costly, both in terms of financials and in terms of reputations with your customers. You don't like suppliers that have bunches of quality problems, and I'm sure your customers don't like their suppliers, you guys, that have lots of quality problems. But we want to be as proactive as possible. That's what the whole standard's about. That's what problem solving is about. We don't want to be reacting, because reacting, we've already lost money and it cost us money. But there's several tools that you can use for problem solving, and this is just a couple of them. And we're going to go through a few tools and examples. And if anybody has a question at any time, raise your hand or speak up. I think I'll be able to see a chat there. I think there's a chat if you want to put a question in the chat. But Ishikawa fishbone diagrams, those are good to help facilitate the problem solving process. You could do a fault tree analysis, or most of the time in the automotive world anyway, we use a 5 why to try to drill down to the root cause or root causes of the problem. Common mistakes that I see and everybody sees in regards to problem solving. One is failure to implement a good process or approach to problem solving, be it an 8D or any other problem solving methodology. Two is improper definition of the problem at the beginning. If you don't define the problem appropriately, your chances you're not going to fix the problem. You're going to be working on something else that's not relevant to the problem. Improperly identifying or fixing the real causes, the real root causes. Not dedicating time. Serious problems take serious time to address. It ain't like you can fix something immediately. You might be able to put a Band-Aid on something immediately, but you're not going to fix the root cause. The biggest one that I see is poor verification of the solution, not following up on it, not verifying that it was effective. Inadequate planning to avoid known or anticipated problems. Not going to the floor to review the problem. If the problem was something related to the painting process, you probably need to go to the painting process to get an understanding of the problem, and involve those people in the painting process. Not updating your PFMEA with lessons learned or actions that you're taking to address the problem. Incomplete information on the 8D. 8D submitted late. Some customers require that you submit 8Ds or at least initial response within 24 hours or 14 days for the final response. It should be done by a cross-functional team, not just the quality manager. That is something that I see in a lot of companies. The quality manager is the guy who always does the corrective actions. Well, the quality manager is usually a knowledgeable person, but he is not the expert in most of the things that we're talking about in regards to corrective actions. It should be the process owners being on the team. They might have to have their hand held and be babysitted a little bit, but they should be involved in the corrective action process. Corrective action is just simply done too fast, pencil whipped. Poor team training, that they're not competent in problem solving. Lack of horizontal deployment. I call that a look across, read across, where we're implementing these corrective actions or improvements everywhere that is applicable. Because in the IATF world, and I had to explain this to a company this morning, if we have a finding one year and next year we come back and we find the same finding again, that's 2 major nonconformances. And if we find the same finding at a verification audit, it's not a nonconformance, it's you lose your certificate. So it's extremely important that you get to root causes and you put permanent corrective actions in place to address them. Incomplete countermeasures for each root cause. Each of the causes you identify should have countermeasures put in place. If you're not putting a countermeasure in place, how is that root cause going to be eliminated? And that's what we want to do, is eliminate them. And the 5 whys is why it was made, why it was not detected, and why it was not predicted. You don't necessarily need to put the why it was not predicted or the systemic one if you can't get to it, but it's very important to do the why it was made, why did this defect happen, and why did we not detect it in our system. There's a big difference between correction and corrective action. Correction fixes the immediate problem. That's the Band-Aid. Corrective actions address the root causes that you have identified to eliminate the problem from happening again. Big difference between correction and corrective action. I always ask the question, the actions that you're taking, will this prevent this from happening again? If the answer is no, you need to back up and try again. And retraining is not an acceptable corrective action. Training might be part of the correction that you're doing, but retraining is never a acceptable corrective action. If training was the problem, if that did cause the issue, then we need to address the training process, not just retraining. So here's a simple situation. We have an operator did not complete their hourly check. Okay, that happens. I see that all the time when I'm auditing. Their check sheet's just not filled out for one reason or another. Correction might include having them immediately do the hourly check and record it on their check sheet, and maybe retraining the operator to do their checks. That should be part of the correction. Corrective action should address, why was he not doing this? Was he not trained appropriately? Then we address the training process, not just retraining. Why we need to address why he was not trained appropriately. Is it a resource issue? Is the guy overloaded? Is it the procedure or the process is not clear? Another example, you got a procedure out there that's posted that is not the correct revision. Okay. Correction might include updating that revision, tearing down the old document, putting up the new document. That would be correction. Corrective action needs to address why the procedure wasn't updated, the copy out on the floor, that is, when the change was made. Was it a training related issue? Was it a process or procedure related issue? But that needs to be addressed. And this is one that actually I had yesterday at a client that last year they had procedures out on the floor that was not the correct revision. So they had a minor nonconformance. And this year we found again a very similar issue. Just documents on the floor was not the correct revision. So that's an indication their corrective action they did last year was not effective. And then that resulted in them having a couple of major nonconformances in the audit. Customer received product that was mislabeled. Correction should be, we're going to get those products labeled correctly. Maybe we're going to express ship them labels for them to do it. Maybe somebody's going to drive over to their factory and redo it. Maybe we're going to recall the parts and have them relabeled. Maybe we issue a quality alert for everybody to know, hey, we had this issue, so everybody's aware of it. That's part of correction and containment. Corrective action should address why it was mislabeled. You know, what happened in the packaging labeling process that enabled us to mislabel a part. Another example, employees have not been trained to the quality policy. Okay, well, let's train the employees to the quality policy. That's the correction. That's the immediate action we're going to do. Corrective action needs to address why they were not trained in the first place. Maybe we need to address the training or the onboarding process when we bring a new employee in. Maybe we don't have the policy posted in all the areas of the plant that need to be. Another example, no internal audits have been completed. Simple correction, we're going to complete the internal audits. Corrective actions need to address why they were not being completed. Was this a resource issue? Was this a top management supporting the quality management system issue? Was this a training issue? Whatever the issue we determine needs to be addressed with the corrective actions. Here we got a customer that gave us a scorecard that was red. We got a 1 out of a 10 on quality. And there's been no actions taken to address this poor scorecard. Well, the simple correction is going to be, we're going to investigate why we were red, and we're going to take actions to address that. That's correction. That's correcting what was wrong. Corrective actions need to address why we were not taking actions when we received the scorecard to start with. We might need to update the procedure or the process related to reviewing scorecards, or the management review process, or the corrective action process, wherever our 5 why or root cause analysis takes us. But if we're not changing a process or a procedure, it's most likely not corrective actions. I think the last one here on these corrections and corrective actions, a PO was issued to a supplier that did not include the required tests that needed to be performed. Well, correction might be updating the PO to put the required test on and communicating that update to the supplier. Corrective actions need to address why this was not on the PO to start with. Maybe we need to update the procedure or process related to purchase order creation and contract reviews and POs being issued. Problem solving basically follows this Plan, Do, Check, Act, which the whole standard ISO and IATF follow the Plan, Do, Check, Act, where we plan something out, we do it, we check, we monitor it, and we take actions if we're going in the wrong direction. 8D is an approach. It's not necessarily a problem-solving tool. And I'm going to skip through a few of these, but the summary of the 8D is we have a problem-solving team. Again, you got to have a cross-functional team, not just one person. You need to have a good problem description that defines what the problem is clearly. We should do containment, immediate actions. And when we say containment, most 8Ds and problem solving forms just say containment at this step. That don't necessarily just mean product containment. That's containing, that's putting the Band-Aid on the problem. If it's not a product related problem, then we need to put a Band-Aid on whatever it was. We need to correct it. And when the IATF is going to change and the CARA system is going to change next year, this is one that is going to change. They're going to add containment / correction in that S1, S2 section in the CARA file. Do a root cause analysis, be it a 5 why or be it another methodology for root cause analysis. You put the countermeasures in place. You validate those countermeasures. And you do preventative actions, do a look across, read across to make sure you implement that in all areas that are applicable. And then you follow up on all the actions that you took. And basically, again, it follows the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. If the problem is not clearly defined, what might happen, and I'm going to open this up for the group. What might happen if the issue or the problem is not defined clearly? I'm asking for audience participation.
Hi, this is Sue. I'm
Yeah.
going to say, you're going to address, not the root cause. You're
Yeah.
just going to get a side benefit maybe, but
Yeah, you're
not.
probably not going to get to a root cause
Yeah.
of the problem. Yes. Anybody else? People going in the wrong direction, somebody noted in the chat. Yeah, they might be working on the wrong thing. We could be wasting time. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. Yes. What else?
This is Karen Graves,
Mhm.
and I would say it's going to happen again.
Yes, it definitely, the problem is going to repeat if we don't solve it. And if we don't define what the problem is clearly, then yeah, we're spinning our wheels. We're wasting our time. We're going in the wrong direction, and we're not going to get to a root cause. Let's get back to my presentation. So here's an example of defining the problem. And this is 5 different statements defining a problem. It's all the same. It's the same problem, but it's defined a little bit differently. The first sentence is monitoring and measuring process was not good. Gauge calibration records were not complete. Several gauge calibration records did not include the NIST traceability to the master used. Or calibration records did not meet the requirements for the procedure, WI, whatever. Or calibration records for gauges 675, 786, and 980 did not include NIST traceability to the master used. All of these are saying we've got a problem with the gauge calibration system. It is. But the clearest one would be the bottom one. You know, calibration records for these 3 gauges did not include NIST traceability, because we would want to, whenever I'm following up on a corrective action, I'm going to follow up on these 3 gauges to make sure they were updated. And I'm also going to follow up on other gauges to make sure this issue is addressed, look across, read across. Yeah, if we don't define it appropriately, training process, here's another example. Training process not effective. Training records were not complete. Several employees' training records were incomplete. Training records didn't meet our procedure. And the review of training records in the paint department found no evidence onboard training from form HR 23 was completed on 3 new hires. And the last one is the most appropriate. It gives us the more information. It's clear, it's concise. It tells us what department it was in, that we had 3 employees hired. That's the most clearest, concise definition of this training issue that we're having. Containment. Containment shouldn't include stopping the bleeding, containing the situation. And the timeliness is of essence. I've had situations in my past career where we had a situation that we didn't really contain very well, and it cost us millions of dollars because the problem expanded so quickly because we didn't have our arms around it. If we don't contain it quickly, what can happen? You know, costs can grow. The problem expands to other customers or other product lines or other areas if we don't get a handle on the situations. And this is just a simple graph of time versus cost of really any complaint, but this is just in general terms. If we contain something very quickly, it's not going to cost us that much. But if it expands, it can multiply astronomically. Here's a situation. You know, we had a GE called the company on Friday afternoon at 4:20 p.m. complaining that they had these steel balls that they bought that were rusting in a dishwasher. And the customer gives us a lot traceability of this lot number. What could we possibly do with this situation if a customer calls you and they have a lot traceability. What would we do? What could we do? What should we do? Anybody want to give a stab at what we should do in this situation? Mind you, it's Friday afternoon at 4:20 p.m. we get this call. It's time to go home. What should a good company do in this case?
Check inventory and contain any additional material.
Sure, we're going to look up that lot number. We're going to check the history of that lot number. Did this lot number just go to that customer? Do we have any of this lot number still in stock that we can check and test? Yeah, we want to get our ducks in a row, as I would say. We want to pull all the shipment history, the production history, the inspection history. We want to get our ducks in a row. And timeliness again is of essence, because if you wait till Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning of next week, we went 3 or 4 more days. So it is important to get a grasp of the situation as soon as possible. Here's another example. Some companies have red rabbits, that's error proofing masters that they run at the start of the shift to verify that the inspection process will work. In this example, we had a check today on second shift, and their red rabbit, their defect part did not work the way it was supposed to. So the inspection system is messed up. So we should collect all data. We should contain all production since the last known good check. Maybe that was the previous shift. And some companies that do red rabbits once a week, and I have had some companies that do their masters once a week or once a month. That's a high risk, because if you find a problem, you've got a week's worth of production to contain. And you may want to review your records related to running the red rabbits, contact maintenance and engineering to repair the inspection process immediately. IATF says we got to review our maintenance plan and objectives and have a documented plan to address corrective actions when objectives are not met. IATF also says a corrective action plan has to be developed, indicating specific actions and timing, assigned responsibilities, so that the process becomes stable. ISO says simply you need to take appropriate correction and corrective actions without undue delays. That's related to audit findings. ISO also has 10.2 in the corrective action section. When a nonconformity occurs or those arising from customer complaints, you shall react to the nonconformity. Take control and correct it and deal with the consequences. And they also say corrective actions shall be appropriate to the effects of the nonconformity encountered, meaning big problems get big attention. Little problems, not so much big attention. Also in IATF, in their problem solving section, they say you got to have a documented process for problem solving. And that includes implementation of systemic corrective actions. And that includes verification of the effectiveness of those corrective actions. We shall perform analysis on customer complaints and field returns, including problem solving and doing corrective actions to prevent them from reoccurring. Every problem has a cause. And I always ask the question, can every problem be solved? Can every problem be solved? And the answer is no. Sometimes there are situations that you can't resolve. But you do need to mitigate those as much as possible to make it a manageable issue. Only investigation will uncover the root causes. We have a manufacturing failure. We know it's caused by something. There's always causes, and sometimes there's multiple causes. Ideally, we want to know as much as possible about those causes. You guys that are in the automotive world, what document do we have that indicates what causes defects?
The
Anybody?
FEMA. The
Your,
FEMA.
your FMEA. Your FMEA should be a document that we utilize when we have failures and complaints. That's where we should almost always start when we have a manufacturing type defect or a manufacturing complaint. Let's move on because we're gonna run out of time today. But yeah, we should be looking at why the defect was made, why the defect was not caught, and why the defect maybe wasn't predicted. You know, if it was not even on our PFMEA, then yeah, we need to update our PFMEA to include that failure mode. But if we've done a robust APQP process, we should be capturing as much failure modes as possible. Good problem solving begins with understanding. You know, one way of understanding the situation is documenting the problems on an Ishikawa diagram, or utilizing a fault tree analysis, or utilizing a 5Y. All of these are very good, and you don't have to use all of them. But here's an example of one. You can use the Ishikawa diagram to define what's happened. Fault tree analysis is another analysis to define what happened. And 5Y analysis is why it happened. And there's other tools that I like to use. One's like a timeline. You know, when I was in the steel ball world, we would always, when we had a complaint, we would get a timeline developed on when the product was made, when it went from this process to this process, when it was inspected. That helps get a understanding of the problem. Always, and I just made it a habit of always doing a timeline on what the initiating event was, maybe the sequence, organizing your facts. It could help identify what information you lack and identify what areas we want to investigate. It's a visual aid for understanding the event. Others are like check sheets. You know, just data that we've collected could help us identify what the biggest issues are. So somebody looking at our graph here, we got a cylinder machining and finishing operation, and we've got 8 hours. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 hours, and these are a number of defects per hour. Which area might we want to focus on, or what is our biggest problem in this case that we might want to focus on? Anybody want to analyze that and see what they think? Would it be wrinkled finish? We only have 15 of those.
Let's start with wrong alloy.
Yeah, we got wrong alloy. We got 125. That's about a third of our problems. And metal burrs is another higher contributor. So yeah, it helps us organize and identify what we might want to focus on to improve. Here's another example. You know, we got a scrap program, and our scrap has went up. You know, it was 1.98% last year, and now it's 2.28%, and that's going to cost us over $100,000 a year. And here's the data. Where might we want to focus our efforts? Who wants to take a stab there? Our average last year was 1.98, and our average this year so far is 2.28. And actually it went up from 2 to 2.4, 2.3, 2.2, 2.6, 2 and we're at 2.7 now in December. So just looking at the data, where would we focus?
In the heading.
And why in the, and this is lessons learned. There's no right or wrong answer, but why would you go to heading? And I see why. In December, it went up. So we might want to look at heading. It did go up 10 pounds from November to December. So yeah, we might want to look at that month. Anybody else have a area we might want to focus on?
Inspection.
And why in the inspection department?
Because it looks like it's pretty much well doubled from August to September.
Yeah, last year our average was 10 pounds.
Mm.
This year our average is actually 55 or 5 times. And we went from a good 5, 10, 9, 8, 10. We went to 20, we went to 35, we went to 50. We're just going up, 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 up. Something happened here. So that's where we should focus. That's a good methodology, just looking at data to say, hey, you know, let's focus on inspection, because that's where the data shows us we're having a abnormal trend. But yeah, we should look at also at heading two, because it did jump up that 1 month. Okay, other tools we can use is Pareto diagrams, you know, plotting things from the largest to the smallest. You know, the 80-20 rule, 80% of your problems occur in 20% of your areas. It helps to get a big bang for the buck, you know, identify the biggest areas. Others is just SPC charts, you know, looking at the stability of the process, the variation that's going on, help maybe identify trends. You know, anything that's outside of the control limit is abnormal, because statistically that should not happen if your process is stable. If your process ain't stable, you know, the data is probably wonked up. Histograms is another way of displaying data that's sometimes useful. Scatter plots, just plotting, you know, a correlation. You know, this is Old Faithful eruptions. You know, the duration is here at the bottom on the x-axis, from 1.5 minutes long to 5 minutes long, and the waiting time between eruptions is the y-axis. So if we're looking at data and wanting to see a trend, you know, or use statistics, you know, if it was a 5-minute duration, well, you know, it's going to be probably around 80 minutes before the next eruption. There's not going to be another eruption in less than 50 minutes, because statistically it's not going to happen looking at that data. And it's mathematical models. It can be used for predictions as well. The magnitude of the effort is important. You know, ISO and IATF both say the same thing. Serious problems receive serious attention. Corrective action shall be appropriate to the magnitude of the nonconformance discovered. Fishbone diagrams is an example of a way to analyze the situation or get more data. Usually you have manpower, material, machines, method, measurement, Mother Nature. Here's an example of one that we usually teach in a class, but everybody's probably been in a rear end accident. I've been in a couple of rear end accidents. You that have been in a rear end accident, what might have been some of the causes that caused that? Anybody want to say what was the cause of their rear end accident?
Distracted driver.
A distracted driver. That's probably the number one reason. You know, I've been rear-ended twice, and it was both by a no offense to ladies, but ladies on their cell phone. Both of them. They were texting on their phone, and they just did not stop, and they plowed me. What else might be a factor related to a rear end collision you may have had? Object on the road. Yes, it had something in the road. Somebody slowed down real quick, and the person behind them couldn't react in time. Anybody got any other things that might? Your brakes went out. Yes, if you have a brake issue, then that could be a contributor. So you have a medical condition, a heart attack. The environment. What in the environment might be a contributing factor on a crash? Yeah, rain, ice, snow. Anybody live in the Knoxville area or been in Knoxville driving west on I-40 around 5:30 in the evening? The sun. That's right. Yeah, and I-40 in Knoxville, the sun is right in the road. And there's always rear end accidents that when the sun goes down on a sunny day in Knoxville on I-40. But here's some examples of what environment might be, the rain, the weather, the fog, the construction, the bad road. Manpower could be drivers distracted, drivers sleepy, or the driver made an error. The method could be insufficient speed or too fast, or, I've seen people doing wild things in cars, from eating to changing clothes to putting on the makeup to reading the paper, to all kinds of things. But yeah, that distracts drivers. Or measurement. There is a 4-second rule that you're supposed to be 4 seconds behind the vehicle in front of you, no matter how fast you're going. It should be 4 seconds to give you enough time to react. Could be bumper to bumper traffic, could be a cause. The vehicle condition, the tires, the windshield wipers, or the brakes. Or it could be an impaired driver or debris on the roadway. But the top 10 most likely is cell phone and texting. That is number one by far. And, radio changes, eating in the car, rubbernecking, drugs, alcohol, driver distraction, excessive speed, bad road, and weather. And there's strengths to doing an Ishikawa diagram like that. It encourages participation from the group. It should be done in a group. Promotes imaginative thinking. Should be no bad ideas. Connects the stakeholders, promotes communication. It is a graphical way to learn, and it's quick and easy to do. But there's weaknesses. You got to have experts to do it. You got to have subject matter experts. For instance, this exercise with automobile accidents, if we'd have done that with 5-year-olds or kindergarten kids, they wouldn't be able to do this. They have no experience. They have no knowledge of all of these things that we went through. So you need to have the experts. It's difficult to prove that we have all the causes or risks identified. We might miss one or two. Group dynamics may come into play. You could have somebody totally dominating the conversation and not allowing other people to participate. Or it could be a separation of factors into categories. Could be an issue. Corrective action should address the problem, the procedure, and the process. They should address the root causes that we identify. Here's an example of a 5 why. Well, a 5 why is an activity required by some automotive customers, and I'm a proponent of doing 5 whys, but they are sometimes painful and difficult to do. But usually there's 3 legs, and the 3 legs are typically why it was made, why it was not detected, and why it was not predicted. But before doing a 5 why, it's best to get your data together or your information together, and you could do that with that Ishikawa diagram. There's strengths of doing a 5 why. It connects the stakeholders to the process. It's a good way to communicate within the team. It's a visual aid, great way to organize the logic. If-then approach, and you should be able to walk it backwards and forwards, and we'll have an example of that here in a second. And allows deep dives into the process, but it's something that's not done very quickly. It does take time to do a very good 5 why. It is relatively quick, and it's easy to remember the whys. 5 whys. You don't have to do 5. You can do 3 whys if you get to the root cause, or it could take 10 whys. But there are weaknesses. Again, you got to have experts that know about the process. If a mistake is made in the logic, the whole thing is faulty. Group dynamics, again, can play a role if you have one person dominating the discussion. And it typically points to one singular event as the cause, but that's not always the case. Here's an example. We got pizza making process. The customer complained about the quantity of olives on a pizza. I don't know who puts olives on pizzas, but somebody did. There was not enough olives. That's why he complained. Why was there not enough olives? There was an inadequate amount of olives applied at the prep station. Why? The process required it to be estimated. Why? There was no standard measurement tool for the process. Therefore, it required it to be estimated. Therefore, there was an inadequate amount of olives. Therefore, there was not enough olives. Therefore, the customer complained. So it makes sense walking it up and down. So in this case, the root cause was there was no standard measurement tool for the process. So the corrective action is going to be, get a standard measurement tool, be it a weight or be it a scoop or be it a cup. Not all 5 whys require 5 steps. Some mean more or less. Here's another example. Somebody got a speeding ticket on their way to work. You ask 5 why until you're answered that you get to a root cause. Speeding ticket on their way to work. Why? They was an hour late for work and they exceeded the speeding limit. Why? They got up an hour late. They didn't wake up on time. Why did they not wake up on time? The alarm clock didn't work. Why did the alarm clock not work? The clock batteries failed and the battery life had expired. Why? I forgot to replace them when we seen the battery light blinking a couple of days ago. Therefore, the battery life expired. Therefore, the alarm clock didn't go off. Therefore, we was an hour late getting up. Therefore, we had to speed going to work. And therefore, we got a speeding ticket. So yeah, this is one way to get to a good root cause, that they forgot to replace the batteries. Well, countermeasures might be keeping a supply of batteries, buying an alarm clock that has both batteries and electric, or buy a second alarm clock, or use your cell phone. Look across, read across should be happening with every corrective action we do. ISO and IATF have separate requirements, but they say the same thing basically. If we have a corrective action, we should determine if this can be applicable to other areas. ISO says determining if the similar nonconformities can exist or could potentially occur. And IATF says implementation of systemic corrective actions, including consideration of the impact on similar products and processes. Here's an example of doing a look across, read across. In this case, we had a finding for no evidence that annual layouts have been completed per ISON's on ISON part number this per ISON CSR. They're supposed to do annual layouts per this customer's requirement. In this case, maybe they want to lay out who their customers are and do they require annual layouts? And if they do, are we doing them? And if we're not, we need to take actions to do them. This is a good example of just creating a simple table. And that's what I like to do in my corrective actions, just make a simple table in the look across section to identify that we have considered similar parts, similar processes, similar customers in this case. Here's a situation: the error proof in Red Rabbits were not being ran at the beginning of the shift is called out on the control plan. Maybe you make an Excel spreadsheet to document a look across, read across for all the Red Rabbits, or all the Red Rabbits called out on all the appropriate control plans. And are they being ran at the beginning of the shift? The most important step of the whole corrective actions, well, the most important probably is getting to a good root cause. But the second, probably most important, is validating and verifying the effectiveness of a corrective action. It shouldn't be just going to the evidence book and opening it up saying, yep, we updated that procedure. And it shouldn't be just, yep, we trained those employees. It should be following up to see if those documents were actually changed in the system and changed wherever they needed to go, be it production or the sales process, wherever it may be, and following up to see if employees in those processes are aware of those changes, and reviewing data to see if we've had repeated issues, and going there to see where it happened to make sure it has been eliminated, whatever this root cause was. How should you verify those corrective actions? Okay, so we may have had a corrective action where we updated the control plan to complete a 10-ball microscope check on all grades. We may have had a corrective action where we had hard side hoppers were all painted orange and soft side hoppers were all painted green. And maybe our corrective action also included doing a visual inspection aids were updated to include pictures of flat balls with gray finish of unheat treated balls. That may have been part of our corrective actions. So to validate that, we would want to make sure the control plan was updated, make sure we're doing these microscope inspections, make sure the hoppers were painted accordingly, interview employees in visual inspection to make sure they understand the new visual aids. And we want to keep notes of what we did. And here's an example of good notes of validating that previous actions that we just went through. That somebody validated the control plan, they sampled, they walked out, they talked to people, they interviewed operators, they looked at data, they made sure the documents were updated, they looked at the complaint log to make sure we haven't had any similar complaints. This is a very good evidence of verifying a good corrective action. What do we do if we find that the corrective actions were not implemented or they were not effective, meaning we got the same thing going on? What should we do? Anybody want to take a stab at that? What would you do if you're verifying the effectiveness of a corrective action and you find that, hey, this procedure was supposed to be updated and it's not updated? Or we have the same condition, the same failure that we had before. What do we do? Check the corrective action report, restart the corrective action process. Yeah, we need to back up and punt because whatever we did not work. So we want to maybe reopen or reissue the corrective action. Yeah, and this should happen. I mean, it should happen because a lot of our corrective actions are just not robust. But why might some companies or some employees not want to raise the red flag? Why might they not want to do that? To say, hey, this is not effective. This corrective action is not good. Why might some employees resist doing that? It's more work. That's right. It's going to open up a thing. There might be some culture issues that's going on. Yeah. Maybe you're going to be perceived as the bad guy. Yeah, there's many reasons why not to, but none of those reasons are going to solve the problem. And the problem does need to be brought up if it was indeed found not to be effective. Because again, if you have findings in IATF audits or ISO audits and they're repeated, they get escalated. And if it's found during a verification audit, you've lost your certificate. It's simple as that. The risk is very high. Okay, I did want to go over recent IATF changes so everybody's aware of those real quick. There's been several CSRs change in the last few months. GM today came out with the quick reference guide that they have on analyzing their CSR, their scorecards. So if GM's a customer of yours, be sure and look at that because that's how you should be analyzing GM's scorecards. And that's what an IATF auditor is going to be looking at when he's looking at your scorecards. That's how he's going to analyze them too. So you need to be on the same page with it. Stellantis came out with their new one. Ford came out this summer with a new one. The IATF rules has a sanction interpretation that came out in May. Everybody needs to have those on hand. A Renault Group came out. Volvo and Ford's actually had a couple this year. But another one that a lot of companies are not addressing is this AIAG control plan book came out last March. And really the only change in that book that's applicable is that they broke out the reaction section into two parts. And that is who is going to do this reaction and what is the specific reaction. So for instance, if the red rabbits fail, the reaction is probably going to be for the operator. They're going to stop the line. That's what their reaction is going to be. And maintenance, maybe their reaction is they're going to fix or investigate the red rabbit failing or the inspection system failing. And then quality is probably going to have a reaction on containment. or somebody, I don't know if it's quality or production control, but it's going to be multiple people. But it needs to be more detailed now than just stop, call, wait. For specific situations like a red rabbit failing. Okay. Any questions? You know, we finished with 10 minutes extra here. Anybody got any questions about problem solving? Good stories, bad stories?
Hey, are you gonna send this PowerPoint out, Joe?
I can. I'm actually recording this. It's going to be on YouTube.
Oh, okay,
But yeah,
perfect.
I can send you a PDF copy here. If you'll send me an email, I will send that to you.
Yes, sir, I will.
And if anybody needs any help in regards to you know, problem solving or working with the internal audit findings or your external audit findings, I can do that. I can't consult for companies that my registrar works for, that I work for, NSF and PRI, but I can consult with any others. This kind of stuff right here is open enrollment, and all of you guys and most of you guys on here are my past clients with NSF or PRI, and that's okay. And if anybody needs something to get credit for their CEUs, send me a note and I will send that to you as well.
Hey, Joe, it looks like there was something in the chat. Tracy asked if you receive a major nonconformance and it is not effective, is that a cert pull?
If you receive a major nonconformance, the only way you get your cert pulled right now is if you have a major nonconformance in your audit, you have to respond to that within the rules, per the rules, meaning you got to do an initial response within 15 days, and you have to do full corrective action, close it out within 60 days, and then within 90 days you have to have a special audit. If at the special audit they find that the corrective actions are not effective, yes, you lose your certificate. But typically you'll never lose your certificate at a surveillance audit or a recertification audit. You will have majors. You could have, you know, I've had audits that I had 10 major nonconformances in, and we couldn't pull the certificate. We had to give them the opportunity to correct it, and some of them correct them and get them done in 90 days, and some don't. And I've had some companies even this year that they had some major issues and they couldn't get it done in 90 days, and they said, well, we're going to just lose our certificate and we'll back up and punt and try to regroup and reorganize and come back and get recertified maybe next year. Did that answer your question? There is somebody that had a question here that I'm going to ask. I think it's what are other participants doing or have done to address culture issues that cause non-conformances? Oh, let me put that on my, let me put that up there so everybody can see it. Yeah, what's everybody doing or have done to address culture issues that cause non-conformities? And that's a hard one to answer, I would think, because it probably deals with management and the culture that the management has driven or let thrive within an organization. So management would need to be addressed in that case. Anybody have any comments on that or suggestions on that? Yeah, so Tracy, yeah, the answer to your question, if you receive a major, and you have the special audit, and at the special audit, if your major is deemed not effective, yes, you lose your certificate. That's how the process should work. Any other questions, comments? Hopefully everybody's bearing this government shutdown okay. I know the airlines had problems today, and I'm lucky I flew home last night, but I do have to fly back out Sunday, and hopefully I can get out. Well, with that, everybody, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we'll call this one a day, and I will send an email out for our next lunch and learn. If you have a topic you want to cover or haven't had covered, or think might be a good topic for one of these lunch and learns, send me an email and we'll try to do it.
Hey, thank you for your time, Joe.
Thank you.